I think from a fishing industry perspective, I tell people a lot that there are not a lot. We're a small industry, and there are not a lot of good jobs in the fishing industry, just because of the size of the industry. So therefore, if you want to break into the industry, you've got to be the best. You have to be, and that's with any company in this industry, because so many people want to work in this industry. So if you're not figuring out ways to set yourself apart from all those people through greatness, then you're probably not going to get that crack at working in the fishing industry like you may want to. And that's at any level. I mean, You can say that about whether you're a tournament professional or whether you're a marketing professional or whether you work for a company like I do, is that I know there are, on any given day, there's 100 people that would like to take my job.
Yeah, that's right.
Or at least they think they do. So, I think you just have to look at it that way and say, look for any chance you can get to get in this industry, which is something that I did. And then once you get it, don't let it go.
Hey there, you have found the Fishing Business Podcast. I'm glad you're here. I'm Angie Thompson. I'm your host for today, and I'm going to jump right into it by introducing you to the president of Shimano Fishing North America, Dave Pfeiffer. I've known Dave for decades. I used to work for the production company that produced Jose Wahabi's Spanish Fly. And Jose and Dave were early collaborators in the Shimano brand. Shimano sponsored the Spanish Fly since its inception, and they were very important to each other. Jose passed away several years ago in a terrible accident, and we all miss him horribly. I'm sure Dave and I will talk about that a little bit today, but there's a lot of good things to learn from Dave. He heads up one of the finest fishing brands out there. So without further ado, let's jump right to it with the Fishing Business Podcast. Here we go, y'all. Dave, you and I have known each other for a long time. I think since the early 90s, we started doing the Spanish Fly with Jose Wahabi in, I think it was 95. Were y'all with Jose when we started on ESPN2?
Yes, we were. I've been with Shimano since 1988. Oh. And we were with Jose, working with him. He was a field tester for us at that time.
Yeah. What a special guy he was. I know you were very, very close to him, as was I, and I miss him every day, man. I wish he was still around with us.
I miss him so much every day. The thoughts always make me smile.
Yeah, me too. So what did you do before Shimano, or was that your first thing? I mean, you probably started when you were about 10 or 11.
It seems that way. I had a job in downtown Los Angeles working in sales for a paper company. And it was a really good job, a really good company, but it was really boring. And so while I was working there, I was interviewing and trying to get the job with Shimano. And I forgot how many months it was now. Several months after I got the paper company job and was working there, I got the chance to interview with Shimano and then started after that.
So Shimano must have been in its infancy in North America at that time, was it not?
No, we'd been in the U.S. since 1965. That's when we established actually in New York City. And then we moved to New Jersey, and then we moved to Orange County in California. So, we'd been around for over 20 years, a little over 23 years. Yeah, I can do the math.
Yeah. So, but you're actually also an avid fisherman. How did you become involved in fishing? How did you get started fishing?
I actually still remember days with my dad when I was 3 years old, and it's a common story in the fishing world, but my dad started me fishing when I was young, and it did not take long for it to resonate with me, and for me to probably be even crazier about fishing than my dad was as it went on, even though he loved it.
Oh, that's super cool. It's so awesome to get to work in an industry where you're doing something that you really love to do. And the perks of that is that sometimes we actually get to fish, right?
Well, I mean, that is true. And it's interesting because, I run into people obviously all over the country, even all over the world. And they're like, oh, you work for Shimano. That's so incredible. You must get to fish all the time. And, it is an incredible job. And I love working in the fishing industry in a lot of capacities. And but it is a misconception that we get to fish all the time,
Right.
because it's still a business, it's still a regular job, and we work really, really hard in our business. And I think we actually fish less than a lot of people, unfortunately. But when we do, we've been on some great trips, and I have no regrets. But you're surrounded by fishing every day, which I think, a lot of people would really, really like to be able to do in their work.
That's right. And, it is a common misconception. All of you people out there that are thinking, I want to work in the fishing industry because I love to fish and I want to fish all the time. You don't get to do it that much, really.
We still have businesses to run. So
that's right. So, Dave, you have one of the most sterling reputations in the sport of fishing, and Shimano certainly has a fine reputation as one of the most sterling brands and products that are made in the fishing industry. What is it that you think why do you think Shimano has been such a good fit for you personally and your leadership style?
Well, I think it just has to do that I've always had really high standards for myself in anything that I've done. And Shimano standards are, maybe even higher than I've had for myself. So it's forced me to try to even be constantly better, but that's just a fit for me. And, I found as I've grown and been in this culture for so long, I'm really intolerant for anything other than, people or businesses that strive to be just the absolute best. And it doesn't matter what you do, you look at it and figure out how it could have been better.
Right. Yeah. That's what I love about the really good brands. How important, well, I remember a lot of times I can remember having conversations with Jose when he talked about working with you on product development. How important was Jose in those early years to product development and your other pros that you worked with?
Jose was really unique for us in that regard. And so he was really important. It really was only in saltwater products.
Right.
And freshwater, segment of the market is far bigger than saltwater. And we were really young at the time with saltwater. So actually, Jose was, really, really important at that time because we were so young. We didn't have a broad product offering. And Jose was, he was a visionary. He was an innovator. So he really pushed a lot of the early concepts for the product that actually took us quite a few years to get to. But I think that Jose he was just a great push for us with that. And he knew how to work in that process. Right. Otherwise, honestly, there's not a lot of people that stand out as being really influential in our overall product development process. That's more with our engineers and our internal people. But certainly Jose was intertwined in our product development, our marketing, our branding. He was intertwined in a lot of things.
Yeah, he was. And what a great saltwater line you have now. My gosh. But you've been pretty involved in product development yourself personally, haven't you?
I have personally for a lot of years. I'm not so much these days. I'm much more into just the running and the future planning for the business. And I miss it because it was my favorite aspect. But at some point, you have to turn that over to the next generation so that they learn and they grow. And honestly, that's really controlled by our R&D team in Japan with our team's input. But we're really fortunate right now. We have a good team, a good mix of people with very level of experience from entry level all the way up to some experience. And they're digging into that now. And they're having all the same great experiences that I was able to have with it. And it was the hardest thing to turn over. It was the hardest thing.
I bet. Yeah, I bet. But when you started, you said you had a sales job before. Did you start in sales at Shimano?
I started in sales management. Yeah.
And then how did that evolve into product development and then the president role that you're in now?
Well, we were really small back when I started. We were not a big company. And so I just ended up, I guess because I showed interest, right time, right place, I ended up wearing a lot of hats at the same time. I was in charge of sales, marketing, product development, service, kind of all those things ended up on my plate. But again, at the time, it was something that I could handle because we were not anywhere near as large and diverse as we are today. So once you get on that track, I just kind of kept moving up and moving up and moving up and, ended up in the president role of the whole company. So I was in charge of fish and bike, which I did for several years. And then I moved back over just to fishing as Mr. Shimano wanted to have a greater emphasis on growing the fishing business in North America.
And then you guys moved from California to South Carolina a couple of years ago, and you were pretty influential in that move too, weren't you?
Yeah, actually, that was a plan that I made and I proposed to Mr. Shimano, because as great and innovative as the California market is, it's a long way from the rest of the country, and 80% of the fishing business is done on the East Coast, and we just needed to be closer to all of that. I would rather that our team was traveling to the 20% of the market than traveling from the 20% to the 80%. So,
Yeah.
and now we're living in and immersed in the entire East Coast market. And I think that that's been really good for our business over the last few years again.
What a great sacrifice that was for you to make, because I know living in Southern California had to be part of your heart, and then to move because it was the right thing to do for the company. I think is, but it was definitely the right thing to do.
It was the right thing to do. And, it wasn't a challenging move. I love Southern California. I still have, friends that are like family to me there. But, it just, Southern California is a crowded, fast-paced living, and moving to South Carolina is wonderful, wonderful people, a little slower pace of life, still great, diverse fishing. So it's actually been a pretty easy move.
That's great. I love hearing that. Especially as a Southerner. I like it when people come here and like it and don't make fun of it.
Well, everyone I know that's visited here from Southern California loves it. So.
Oh, that's great. I love hearing that too. So Shimano, like we've been saying, I say over and over again, Shimano is one of the strongest brands in fishing. What is, in a nutshell, if you can describe it, what is the brand ethos for Shimano?
Our mission statement is to promote health and happiness through the enjoyment of nature and the world around us. And I think that is just such a great statement, because our ethos is to make sure that our products contribute to that, and contribute to your enjoyment of nature, to contribute to enjoyment of the experience of fishing or cycling. And when your products do that, people just relate to you as a company. So, I think that's overall at a high level. And then, that carries down to the fact that we take that responsibility very seriously. So that is kind of back to what I was saying before, is that, we just don't ever stop trying to make things better and more enjoyable for the user. And that just drives all of our R&D and our manufacturing, the investment in our factories and everything. And I think that just makes Shimano a very unique company.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to stop right here and take a quick break. Before I go to break, though, I want to say to all of you listening at home, here's some key takeaways from what I just heard Dave say. One is, don't be afraid to take a job that's not maybe the job you think you're going to end up with, and especially if it's at a small company, because you can always move. And it's so awesome to work at a small company and get to try your hand at a lot of different things. So I think that's really important. Also, don't be afraid to do what's right for your brand or your partners, such as moving across the country like Dave suggested and ended up being the right thing to do. And then also, I guess the overriding thing would be, don't ever give up on trying to be the best and trying to be better than you were last time. So, all right, we'll be right back with Dave Pfeiffer from Shimano. Do you know what your personal brand is? Because everyone has a personal brand. You may not be intentional about it yet, but all that you say or do or write or post contributes to how others perceive you. And that, my friends, is your personal brand. If you want to develop your brand and mean the things you want it to mean, I have a workbook that will help you get started, and it's free. You can download my Developing Your Personal Brand workbook at www.fishingbusinessschool.com/brand workbook. All right, we're back on the Fishing Business Podcast with Dave Pfeiffer, the president of Shimano Fishing North America, right? Or is it Shimano North America Fishing?
North America Fishing, yeah.
Shimano North America Fishing. And, I don't know if I'm saying this right, Dave, but it seems like Shimano has always had like a product forward marketing focus. Like the star is the product, right? How did that develop?
That is 100% correct. We have a saying in our company, that we're here to serve the product, and that's it. And we are product forward in everything we do. There are marketing companies, there are sales companies. We are absolutely, a product manufacturing company, and that's what we do. That's in Shimano's, DNA. This is our 100th year anniversary, and it's been that way since the founding of the company.
Could anybody do that though? Or do you have to be the best in class to be product forward in your marketing, or could any brand do that?
I guess that just depends on your position and the authenticity that you want. We can be product forward and feel like we're really authentic in that the product, really supports that, stands behind that. I've seen companies push product forward marketing when they didn't have the product to stand up to that. It's a big responsibility. I mean, if you're going to make a product the star, the lead, that product's got to be good, and you've got to be innovative, and you can't be afraid to change and challenge greatness. And Shimano is never afraid. Ever.
Yeah, right. No, and with good reason. How do personalities and pro fishermen and influence factor into Shimano's marketing then, if it is indeed product forward?
That's one I want to answer delicately, because I have, tremendous respect for all of the pros and the people that fish and promote our products and everybody else's products. But that said, they're important to us, but they're not the lead. They're not, you know what I mean? So, and I, as I said, I want to really be careful, because I don't want this to come across that I'm disparaging anybody. It's just that none of us are bigger than the product itself. And so we never place anyone, employees or pro staff or anybody, above or ahead of the product. And that works for some companies, but it doesn't work for us.
Right. You know what else I've noticed about just in my dealings with Shimano over the years is it really does seem like the product is as important as the consumer. You guys are so engaged, and it feels like you know your consumer so well and interact with your consumer so well.
I'm glad it comes across that way. I think we often feel like, you can never do enough for the consumer, and you can never connect with them enough. And so, those are things that we're always looking to improve, because the consumer voice, the consumer confidence in your brand there just is nothing more important. None of us exist without that. So in the product forward, you want to make sure that your product never disappoints the customer.
Right. Yeah. Got that. So keeping in mind there that many of the people listening to this are high school and college anglers, and we've been talking about what an excellent brand Shimano is. What would you say to those young people out there about why it's so important to commit to excellence and really keep doing as much as you can and being as disciplined as you can to commit to excellence?
I think from a fishing industry perspective, I tell people a lot that we're a small industry, and there are not a lot of good jobs in the fishing industry, just because of the size of the industry. So therefore, if you want to break into the industry, you've got to be the best. You have to be. And that's with any company in this industry, because so many people want to work in this industry. So if you're not figuring out ways to set yourself apart from all those people, through greatness, then you're probably not going to get that crack at working in the fishing industry like you may want to. And that's at any level. You can say that about whether you're a tournament professional, or whether you're a marketing professional, or whether you work for a company like I do, is that I know there are, on any given day, there's 100 people that would like to take my job.
Yeah, that's right.
Or at least they think they do. So, I think you just have to look at it that way and say, look for any chance you can get to get in this industry, which is something that I did. And then once you get it, don't let it go.
Yeah. Don't squander
it. Dues. Don't be afraid to pay your dues. And I'll tell you, you can make more money working in a whole bunch of other industries.
Yeah.
That's eventually you'll make the money you want to make in fishing, but a lot of other industries will pay you more. A lot of other industries are just going to be different, but you're not working in the fishing industry. So.
Well, the fishing industry, speaking of that, did have most brands had a banner year last year during the pandemic, which was a little surprise to most of us. But Dave, how do you feel? I talk about this a lot, but what do you think we can all do, you, me, Shimano, and people listening, to engage the newcomers that came into fishing last year to make sure they stay around?
That's a question we're all torturing ourselves with as an industry, because so many people came in. The industry had really been really stagnant, really, same level participation for years, decades almost. And suddenly we have all these new people that jumped in the span of 8 months. Mm-hmm. And most of us have no idea who they are.
Yeah, right.
So much less how to engage them. That's kind of the difficult issue for us is, you can start sort of, just firing shots out there and hoping you reach some people, but we just don't even have the data around as an industry or, honestly speaking, as a company, of who all these people were or are that jumped in the last 8 months, and what it is that resonated about fishing with them, and if they plan to stay. And so your question is not easy to answer right now until we get some more data from our industry to understand who they are and why they got into fishing and what they're looking for from fishing. It's going to be hard to do that. There's a huge missing educational piece in fishing about where to go, how to do it. And, there are some resources out there. RBFF tries to connect on that and some other things, but none of us as brands, we're so busy competing with each other because we've been in a stagnant industry for so long. All of us are maybe tentative to start diverting money to reaching out and saying, hey, who are you? Where'd you come from? What do you want to know? And so none of us are very good at it either, because, most of us all have people that are in high enthusiast level and very passionate about fishing, working for their companies. So I didn't give you a great answer because I don't have one right now.
Well, but I appreciate that, and I kind of get on a soapbox about this because I'm very passionate about reaching newcomers and reaching the beginner, because I feel like so many times what we all do as brands and as individuals is sometimes we speak over the heads of the people that really need to learn from us. And again, I'm saying that as an individual too. When I had people call me during the pandemic to ask me, and that's what I got was, how can I go out with my kids and get out of the house, and how can I, help them catch a fish? And it's very tempting to start talking them over their heads, right? Where really what what I normally would need to say was, go buy some live bait, if you really want your kids to get into it. But but when I see, a lot of times when I see what all of us do, especially in social media, it's almost like we're trying to, as individuals, again, not as a brand, but as individuals, we try to impress each other so much about what we know that we talk over the heads of people that don't know.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
All right. Hey, okay. We're going to wrap things up here in just a minute, Dave, but I can't go without asking you to talk, because I've heard you talk about this before, and you're so passionate and so smart about it, and it's such an important issue. I wanted you to talk a little bit about Shimano's commitment to advocacy and specifically fishing access issues, because I'm not sure the normal everyday walking around angler understands the critical importance of that.
It's every year it grows in urgency and importance, and our basic position is that everything advocacy related, all fisheries policy and decisions should be science-based, not symbolic. And two, that the U.S. has proven time and again that our user pay model is the most successful conservation model in the world. No other country, no other entity has as strong a user pay model as we do. And our main concern are access to healthy fisheries, clean water, those things. And again, the key word is access. That means, without sound science, we should not be restricting access to people to go fishing.
Right.
If there's science, the industry is the first one to step up and say, hey, we need to close this, we need to limit this, we need to do something about this. But there's the science to back it up. And then therefore, we know what to do to recover it, and we know when to open up that access again. When we get into symbolic closures, they're often in perpetuity. They go on forever. And how can that be, right? And it's not based on science. And that's really dangerous, especially it gets back to your earlier question about keeping all these new participants in the sport. They have to have easy access to fishing. If we keep closing things off and concentrating people into smaller areas, that's not going to be good for the future of our sport. So we believe in the inherent right that people should have the access to healthy fisheries. And so all of the groups that I participate in personally and sit on their board of directors are all about access and good fisheries policy that's based on science.
So without wading into the weeds too deeply, that might, put you in a weird spot. How does that happen when it's not based on science? Is it politics?
It's politics and money.
Yeah.
It's simple, right?
Yeah.
He who has the bigger, bank account and can influence more of the politics around those closures is the one that's going to win, unless we mobilize all of our anglers to say, we're not going to go for that.
Right. And that's what we really need to do, because that's the voices that need to be heard at a state level, or even a regional level, to make sure that they understand that we're not going to put up with it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I hope that we can recruit a lot of these new anglers to the different advocacy groups. There's so many worthwhile angler groups out there. for them to be a part of, like CCA and those type organizations. And that's really important for the future of fishing.
I'm writing that down. I'll do a little, I'll put a link here in the show notes to the Coastal Conservation Association. That's what you mean by CCA. And then are there any others that you would say, you should take a look at?
From a national angler group, CCA is the strongest. There are a lot of worthwhile regional angler groups that I think people can look up in their own states. And I hesitate to start making a list because I know I'll leave something out, not purposely.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a lot of good groups all around the country. But as a national angler group that's really strong and believes in the points I made earlier, CCA is certainly front of mind.
Yeah. And it seems like those closures happen in saltwater, and we don't think they're going to happen we can't imagine that, but it will move. If we continue to let it happen, it will move over into more of the freshwater. Yeah,
there's no question that, saltwater has been the main focus over the last several years. But with the current, the administration signed executive order on 30 by 30, which the goal is to preserve 30% of the nation's lands and waters by 2030. That opens up the potential for lakes, rivers, streams, ponds, everything to be under that 30% number. And, again, to have that done or to accomplish that by 2030, which is not that far away, we really risk a rushed process that gets back to what I said, which is symbolism, not science, because science takes time and science takes money. And all of those should be evaluated before any restriction to access happens.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, Dave, thank you so much for spending the time today. I know you've got way better ways to spend your time than with us, but I sure do appreciate you doing it, man.
Not at all. It's my pleasure, and I really enjoyed it. It was good to see you. And I hope this helps some of the young anglers out there maybe get pointed in the right direction to find a future in the fishing industry, because it's a very fun and rewarding career.
All right. Special thanks to Dave Pfeiffer for taking out the time to do this with us today. Like I said earlier, key takeaways there: start anywhere. If you want a job in the outdoors, start anywhere. And if you want a sponsorship or a partnership with a big brand, start anywhere, because you can always grow once you learn the ropes and get to know everybody and let everybody get to know you. And also, don't be afraid to commit to excellence. That is what has driven Shimano forward to be the huge powerhouse brand that it is today. And I don't think anybody there would ever regret their commitment to excellence. Thanks a lot, y'all. I'm going to sign off the Fishing Business Podcast right now in the words of my favorite fisherman, who always signed off his TV show, The Fishing Hole, by saying, "This is dedicated to Dad. He always had time to take me fishing." See you next time, y'all.